Good morning, distinguished Chair. Thank you. I deliver this statement on behalf of G4, a progressive, constructive, and forward-looking reform-oriented group consisting of Brazil, Germany, Japan, and my own country, India. At the outset, I thank you, Chair, for keeping the focus of today's meeting on two critical aspects of Security Council reforms: the size of the future Council and regional representation. The numerous meetings and endless interactions on Security Council reforms over the years clearly highlight the following. The existing UN architecture is from a different era, an era that no longer exists. The current geopolitical realities warrant a review of this architecture. Reform is essential to make the UN fit for purpose, to enable it to respond meaningfully to the current global challenges. And those who do not endorse real reforms that reflect contemporary realities fall on the wrong side of history, which is detrimental to all of us. Chair, it's against this backdrop that the G4 presented and elaborated its model during the IGN meetings last year and articulated its position on the 5 clusters. Our model attests to our constructive and pragmatic approach towards reforms. I would like to highlight the broad contours of our model with specific focus on today's discussions. First, the Council membership needs to be increased from 15 to 25 or 26. Second, a reformed Security Council would consist of 11 permanent members and 14 or 15 non-permanent members. Third, to have equitable geographic representation, the 6 new permanent members may be elected as follows: 2 from Africa, 2 from Asia Pacific, 1 from Latin America and Caribbean, and 1 from Western Europe and others. Fourth, in case of new non-permanent members, the G4 subscribes to 1 or 2 from Africa, 1 from the Asia Pacific, 1 from Latin America and Caribbean, and 1 from Eastern European states. Fifth, in order to better reflect plurality of views, adequate and continuing representation of small and medium-sized member states, including small island developing states, in the non-permanent category should be given due consideration. Distinguished Chair, G4 has clarified that any reform not accompanied by expansion of both categories is incomplete in the view of the broad membership. Member states which subscribe to expansion of only the non-permanent category ignore the existing imbalances in the permanent category fully. Such an approach fails to address non-representation and underrepresentation in this category. It does not address the legitimate aspirations of the developing world, Africa in particular, and is not aligned with the majority view, including those of L69 and the Common African Position. Adding only non-permanent members would hardly change the power dynamics in the Council, and thus likely further the power of the permanent members. The G4 would like to underscore that regional representation is an accepted practice that has stood the test of time in the UN. Regional representation is as valid as the IGN itself, as both were instituted by the same resolution, 62/557. Proposals to introduce new parameters, such as religious affiliation, run counter to established UN practice and add considerable complexity to an already difficult discussion. The path to achieve real reforms, just like any other UN process, is text-based negotiations involving clearly defined timelines and milestones. The Pact for the Future recognizes the urgency of this reform process. In this context, we encourage member states and regional groups to submit further model of reforms in order to facilitate text-based negotiations. We invite the Chair to start text-based negotiations now, ideally by the end of the current IGN. In closing, G4 would once again reiterate that a decision on member states that would become permanent members of a reformed council is a decision to be taken by the General Assembly in a democratic manner. As an advocacy group that works towards meaningful reforms, we do not make any specific recommendation towards this end. Our position on veto is also well articulated. These reflect our flexible approach, a testimony to our unwavering commitment to engage in constructive negotiations towards realizing the vision of reformed multilateralism. Distinguished Chair, please allow me to make the following additional comments in my national capacity. First, those opposed to text-based negotiations do not seek progress on reforms. Second, an argument that an expanded and reformed Security Council would not be efficient is an attempt to stall real reforms. A reformed council with appropriate working methods and accountability mechanisms would be equipped to function effectively and deliver meaningfully on pressing global issues. Third, a consolidated model that does not cover expansion in both the permanent and non-permanent categories would not achieve the purpose of reform, further entrenching the status quo. And finally, attempts to introduce new parameters such as religion and faith as basis for representation in a reformed council runs completely counter to regional representation, which has been the accepted basis for representation in the United Nations. I thank you, Chair.